That was a pretty good burn, if you will.
Hilarious.
Ooh.
Yeah. That's the kind of comedy you can expect from the Lions of Liberty, folks.
Welcome to the Lions of Liberty podcast. Here is your host, your guide, your shining beacon of liberty, Marc Clair.
Hello, and welcome once again to the Lions of Liberty podcast, your favorite show about the ideas of liberty. Well, maybe it's not your favorite, but we're going to work on that by bringing you another fun roundtable today in this, which is episode, guys, I'm getting a little nervous here, episode number 192. We are really ticking all the way up to episode number 200, in which I will have a very special episode that I will detail more in the days and weeks to come. But for now, you can find today's show notes featuring everything we discussed in the show over at lionsofliberty.com/192. And if you are like many of our fans who have asked how they can help support our program, one very, very simple way you can do that is by going to lionsofliberty.com/Amazon and clicking on our link, our Amazon affiliate link, and making all your Amazon purchases through there. And by the way, Amazon, pretty cool company. They pretty much sell everything that has ever existed ever and bring it right to your door very quickly. So get on that. Or just send me a check. Whatever. You don't need to do that. Anyway, moving along, it's been quite the crazy week in politics, and to go over that crazy week, I've assembled a crazy crew of libertarian-leaning folks, many of whom are drinking liquor right now. I am not one of them because I had a rough weekend, and we don't really need to go into greater details than that. But first, why don't I bring in Lions of Liberty co-founder, a man who is often sitting next to my left in this studio, but now he's a big boy with his own microphone, so he is at home about a mile and a half down the street. Mr. Brian McWilliams, welcome.
Thank you. I'm a big boy now. Boom, boom. If you remember that commercial. I think it was Pampers.
Nope, zero of us got that.
Well, I'm sure any parents at home will. Maybe Odie will get it. He's got a kid now. Anyway, yes, I'm here. Thank you. Thank you. My own mic, my own headphones, my own world. Since you didn't ask, I'll tell you, I'm drinking a dark and stormy right now. Delicious.
That actually sounds delicious, as much as the idea of booze really disgusts me.
Oh, yeah. I got the Blenheim in there, the strongest ginger beer ever, which if I start coughing constantly during this podcast, it's because I accidentally inhaled while drinking this, because it's that potent.
All right, and we're going to move things along to the fine city of Pittsburgh, where we also have another co-founder of Lions of Liberty, the host of the weekly Felony Friday podcast, which you should all be hearing in your Lions of Liberty feed, which, of course, I'm sure you are subscribing to on iTunes, on Stitcher, however it is you listen to podcasts. He is, of course, the felony expert, Mr. John Odermatt. Not the expert at committing felonies, I should point out, but
that we know of.
Just to clarify, yes, I've never committed a felony. That's been recorded in a court of law. I'm still in the clear to this point.
Well, you know what's side note, a buddy of ours named Taylor just had a book come out called How to Steal the Mona Lisa and seven other famous treasures. So you could write a book like that, Odie, and, just pretend it's like OJ. What if I did it? So go for it, man.
Does he say how to do it without being caught?
I believe so. Otherwise, what would be the point? Go ahead and steal it. They'll just arrest you outside. That's the book, everyone. It's a very short. It's about 10 pages.
Just walk in and pick it up and try to walk out. That's the...
Right. Taylor Bayouth is his name, by the way, if you want to look that up.
Are we getting paid for that plug, or what?
I'll get paid in high fives.
I didn't see anything come into accounting about an invoice for that, but...
It is a cool book, though.
First one's for free. All right, and
so
finally...
I am also drinking here. I know you like to skip over the drinks.
I'm skipping over everybody's drink. Go on, what are you drinking?
I got a little Sweetwater 420, my favorite beer, and some Jim Beam, which is, I think, America's favorite Kentucky bourbon. So
always mixing over there in Pittsburgh.
It's been a long day. I was, traveling today down visiting my brother, so I got out of the car and literally walked upstairs, poured a Jim Beam, and started this podcast.
Is it the perils of fatherhood that forces you to always have two drinks, or is it just your general alcoholism?
A little bit of both. A little column A, a little column B.
All right. And finally, I'd like to bring on a gentleman who is often referred to in our inner circles as the godfather of Lions of Liberty, because he was the first one to tell me about all this stuff, all this libertarian stuff. I had never even heard of this before 15 or so years ago when this man waltzed into my life. Quite literally, he was doing a waltz. He is Mr. Howie Snowdon from Leesburg, Virginia.
Hey, Mark. You definitely are the only one not drinking tonight. I'm having a little bit of Yingling Lager, feeling the Pennsylvania pride.
In the whole country.
In the whole country.
Country.
Actually, there's probably a lot of hungover people in Scranton today.
What's this thing where people are celebrating St. Paddy's Day, but not on St. Paddy's Day? What's going on with that? I don't like it.
Some people feel that way. In Scranton, though, it's always either the weekend before or after St. Patrick's Day. If it falls under the weekend, great, but people aren't going to miss out.
A lot of cities do that, especially if they have a parade or something like that.
Yep.
And I was there. I was there in Scranton for a St. Paddy's Day parade one magical year. Me, Rico, I think was there. We had the worst pizza of my life. It was like white American cheese pizza, and it was disgusting. And I remember I threw up in your parents' bathroom, Howie.
I heard Howie actually got beat up at one of those ones. Is that true?
All right. Enough about St. Patrick's Day parade.
That's a podcast all of its own.
We're going to save this stuff for the blooper reel. So
got a lot of liberty to talk about here. Let's keep things moving.
We do have a lot of liberty to talk about. And, there were a lot of debates this week. We had a Democratic debate, once again, another Republican debate, and a little-known, once again, a very little-known Libertarian debate, all of which we'll touch on. But first, I want to get into the big story out there, what everybody's really been talking about. And it's not the content of these debates. It's the violence or the apparent violence associated with Donald Trump rallies, but more specifically, this specific rally in Chicago that was basically violently interrupted by protesters to the point that it was actually shut down. I have different levels of thought on this, but why don't I just start with Odie, because I think you, maybe more than me and anybody else, has been really following the Donald Trump phenomenon a lot, reading a lot of Scott Adams' work on his persuasion skills. So what are your initial thoughts about this? I mean, because to me, regardless of the right or wrong here, I mean, there's all these talk about free speech. If free speech was violated, I don't really think this is really a government thing, although he's running for government office. So we can argue about how that space was his private property all day long. But at the end of the day, what do you think all this stuff does for Donald Trump from the perspective of him as this master persuader, as this man who is, despite all the negativity associated with him, is by all metrics continuing to gain support?
Yeah, it's something to watch for sure. I think, and it continues to blow my mind, and at times I'll have a voice in the back of my head saying that, Donald Trump's, this is going to hurt him, he's going to lose votes, and then I remember, I read another Scott Adams piece and remember what he's actually doing, and he's doing something similar to what Barack Obama did, I think, when he ran, and they're dividing the country in order to get votes, playing the electorate against each other. And I think in the states that he needs, and he's probably, I'm not going to say that he planned for that rally to be interrupted and postponed. Maybe he did. I'm not sure, but he'll definitely play it off in a way that plays to his supporters, probably strengthens his base, and will probably get him more votes somehow. It's hard to imagine. I'm not endorsing the guy, but I do think he's going to win, and I think he's going to win the nomination, first of all, GOP nomination, and he's also going to beat Hillary Clinton. He's going to be our next president. As much as I hate to say it, I think those are the facts right now, and things will probably get uglier at these rallies, and it's just a divided country, and it's sad to watch.
Is the country really as divided as these isolated, because I'm still going to call them isolated incidents, because for the most part, these are not, these are things the media are focusing on, but it's not like there are riots in every American city with progressives and, nationalist conservatives going at it. This is not something that's really happening everywhere on this level, but obviously it's being played up in the media when it does happen. I mean, are we really a divided country in that sense, or is it just the politicians' ability to make us as divided as possible when we might otherwise come together against a lot of things, like against the establishment politicians, which I think in a way is why Trump is doing so well, because he has become the embodiment for many, right or wrong, of the anti-establishment.
I think that the country actually is more divided than we think, because I mean, really, the politicians are to blame, as is mainstream media coverage, because it's become so divisive in the way that they're positioning each other and the two parties, which is another problem with the two-party system. You got the two parties constantly attack each other and demonizing the other side, throwing all these things at them, saying horrible things. So you get their supporters riled up, where now they just say, oh, I hate all Republicans. And, you talk to a lot of people that are Democrats, and they'll say, oh, I hate Republicans, blanket statement, doesn't matter, I'll never vote for one. And it's the same thing on the Republican side. That is all a product of these really polarized media talk points or outlets that are just pushing the agenda. And as I said, the politics. So I think the country actually is to a point where it's probably more divided than it's ever been, because nobody is out there talking about, hey, here's where we're the same, except maybe libertarians. Here's where we're the same. Here's where we overlap. Why don't we look for positives rather than ways to attack each other and demonize the other side and say, here's where you're effed up?
But that's not how you win votes in a primary. You don't win votes in a primary by telling everybody how we're going to come together. Maybe in a general election you do, but sadly, to win votes in a primary, you got to show people that because you got to think about who's going to vote in a Republican or a Democrat primary is people that feel strongly, for the most part, independents do kind of switch from one side to the other, for the most part, feel strongly already about that side for whatever reason. So,
right. Or an issue. Like they always target, like, what's the hot button issue that really pisses people off? That's what I'm going to latch on to is my point. Like Trump with immigration, it's like that's what people are pissed off about. The immigrants coming in. So that's going to be my main talking point.
Hey, something interesting. Like, I haven't been watching the news the past couple of days, so the first I heard about this was I was on the phone with my mother, and she's like, can you believe all the stuff with the rise of Trump's rally? He's inciting people to violence. Somebody's got to stop him. And I'm like, no, Mom, I haven't heard about this. So that was her take. And then I go on Facebook, I see all these memes from, like, some conservative people that say, like, oh, too bad they don't care enough about the violence and crime rate as they do about a Trump rally. So you've got that. And then there's other people, I guess, like conspiracy folks that are like memes saying your candidates couldn't beat Trump, so now you're paying these people to come out and protest.
Well, that I believe is happening because when we saw it with the Tea Party and Ron Paul back when the Tea Party was a legitimate thing instead of be a bastardized piece of shit like it is now. But you'd see people come out and they were legitimately, like they were Democrats that came out and said, okay, we're going to screw this up. We're going to start trouble under the guise of being Tea Party members because it will get media coverage. So
right, and Trump was saying it's Bernie supporters because Hillary's supporters didn't have enough energy or care enough to come out and do anything.
That I believe. Right. He's probably right. I mean, it doesn't excuse how they were treated there, unless they had started the violence, which it doesn't seem like they did. But
I'm sure it's on both sides because I've seen videos that go both ways. But it very in this incident, it absolutely does seem to me that the protesters were the ones instigating everything from everything I've seen. I mean, they showed up at a rally for someone that they didn't support and did it intentionally to shout the person down, to get in protesters' face. There were people grabbing Trump signs from people, ripping them up, throwing them in their faces. I don't know how much you guys have watched the footage out there, but I mean, it's clear to me that the protesters, I'm sure there were some protesters who might have just been there to be normal protesters or whatever that means, but there was no doubt in my mind they were there specifically to incite violence. I don't see how to look at it any other way. We can also make the argument that maybe Trump has not done a very good job of not promoting the sort of violent, I guess, rhetoric in some ways, at his rallies when he said things like, yeah, get him out of here. But why do we only see this about Trump? Because there are protesters that go to Hillary rallies and they get taken by security and they get kicked out. This happens at other people's rallies. And yet the media is all Trump, violence, violence, violence. I'm not saying there's not some legitimacy to it, but once again, it always seems that when they focus on Trump, everything is exasperated and exaggerated, and whereas they'll downplay the same things happening anywhere else with any other candidate.
Well, I think it is playing into his hand, and the one quote that stands out to me. This might have been before this past weekend that he said this. But there were protesters at the rally, and they were kicked out. And Trump will go on rambling about something, and he's saying, "What happens to these protesters? Do they get arrested? Do they get charged with anything? I think they should. I think they should have something on their record. Their lives should be ruined for doing this," which is just a ridiculous thing to say for someone to get kicked out of a political rally for their life to be ruined. Now, does Donald Trump really feel that way? I have no idea, but he's saying that, and I mean, he's a scary candidate. He really is. If you think that what he's saying he actually believes to be true, and he wants to move the country in that direction, which I don't really think he does. I just think he wants to win any way possible.
Yeah, but it does come a point where he's kind of too scary, the way he's gone now, where initially we were looking at him saying, okay, you know what, maybe we can deal with some of his shortcomings because they'll never happen, like the wall thing and immigration, because his broader concept will probably benefit us all. But now you see that he's gotten crazier and crazier. You say, I don't know if I could ever support him. Because I was just talking with my fiance's parents are very liberal, so we were discussing that. and said, Trump's foreign policy, before this last debate anyway, was pretty attractive. But then you hear just all this rhetoric and all this hate talk about, Muslims and the mosques and, and the immigration issue. It really makes you wonder how far he's willing to go. And even if you don't believe it, it's hard to say, okay, how can I suspend my disbelief of what he's saying because I don't think he means it to support the guy? Because what if he does?
Yeah, it's the same thing as with him and Hillary. With him, he's saying terrible things that I'm like, I don't think he means it. I think he's just saying it as this rhetoric, but kind of have to take him at his word. And on the other side of the coin, Hillary sometimes says some decent things, but it's like, well, she didn't used to say that. I don't believe her saying that.
Right. Yeah, you can never take Hillary at her word.
He's saying bad things, but I don't think he really means it. She's saying sometimes good things. I don't think she really means it. It's the two of them are just such liars. You can't really support either of them without who knows what you're going to get.
So if you can't support Trump or Hillary, who do you support? Does that lead us into
Harry
a libertarian debate?
Yeah, there you go. Perfect
It
segue.
could, but I don't want to move on quite yet because this whole violence thing, I think, really needs to be examined a little bit more because it seems that so many people I've seen out there, and I'm really just going off social media right now because that's really all I have. I don't watch the regular news, but it really seems that there's so much focus on Trump here and Trump being the devil and Trump being the worst. And there's, like I said, legitimacy to Trump's rhetoric and seeing how that's divisive. But we also need to place blame on the people that come and show up to a political rally for no other reason than to incite violence. And when our politics is turning into violent acts to repress speech that you just don't want to hear because you don't like the rhetoric, I think that's a deeper problem. And these seem to be like the same sort of people that interrupt things everywhere. The same kind of people that will shut down a city street because they're mad about something. And, it's a misdirected anger, but it's very scary when you see people holding Mexican flags and communist flags shutting down an American rally. Now, maybe I'm not a right-wing nationalist, so I don't want to come across as defending Trump's policies and the things that he supports, but the response to it on this violent, visceral level is a frightening one because it's an affront to free speech, and I don't mean that in a legal sense. I mean, but when speech can be shut down through violence, it doesn't matter if it's government doing it or an angry mob doing it. It's a frightening thing to see either way.
Well, you're seeing that in college campuses too, all over the place.
Exactly. I think it's exactly right. I think this is a projection of that thing we're seeing on college campuses, the whole safe space thing, and this is what they want with Trump. They want a safe space from his ideas, so they come and invade it and try to turn his rally into a safe space for them by being violent, by getting in people's faces. And I'm not trying to only blame Trump protesters because I've certainly seen videos of people at Trump rallies who are acting, aggressive towards other people too. But the fact that people are out there blaming Trump and including Ted Cruz, including John Kasich, who are basically siding with these far left protesters and blaming Trump for the actions of others. I think that's just a terrible way to look at things. If you want to blame Trump for some things, blame him for things he actually says and does. But you can't blame him for 10,000 people showing up and being violent at his rally. I just don't see where the disconnect is there.
Yeah, and I guess I'm trying to think if there was a quote where he actually said beat the crap out of him. There might have been one time he said something along that, but yeah, I mean, you can understand if he's like, get him out of here. Of course, you would want those people kicked out as soon as possible. So you can't criticize the man for being like, get the hell out of here. Somebody, security take him out. Now, if the security beats them up, I remember Ron Paul, memorably, some supporters of his got, roughed up at just a general primary, I think. So it's not like that type of thing. But if they're beating people, then yeah, these special services should be held accountable, and his own security team should be held accountable. But if he's just telling them to get out of there and they're being escorted out, you can't blame the guy.
There was the one rally. I mean, I'm laughing because it's funny, but watching it, where I forget where he was, like in New Hampshire or something, and it's cold outside. There's a protest. They kicked him out, and he said, "Take their coats away, throw them out in the street without coats."
That's a little extreme, I guess.
Oh boy! See, we're laughing, so it's like we're part of the fault of this because it is funny. It's a funny thing to say. It's not a funny thing to do.
It is funny. I mean, I'm sorry, but it's funny.
I mean,
throw them over the wall. Take the coats.
Oh boy! All right. So, I mean, any other thoughts anybody wants to get on this? To me, it's just a frightening thing to see when you have literally communist groups waving communist flags, shutting down a political rally, and conservatives and the mainstream media all siding with the violent communist protesters. That's what I'm seeing here, and it's troubling. Trump stuff aside.
I just hope that all of our libertarian listeners remember that, if you ever are protesting something, violence is not going to get anyone to come to your side. You're not going to be cast in a positive light. It's not going to help the cause. It's not going to do anything beneficial for anyone.
And no, this is a good example because I might have a lot in common with Black Lives Matter protesters on a lot of things if we actually broke down the war on drugs and the racial inequality in the system. But when Black Lives Matter shows up and causes violence, I will not defend you. And on the flip side, the problem is now I'm going around defending Donald Trump because of this. Not him himself, but in this case, I think that the protesters that are showing up and being this disruptive, 10,000 people, it was a very organized thing. And there's a whole article about it, how this is basically organized by Bernie Sanders supporters. Some other people say there's George Soros money involved. This is a very organized.
I think it was Clinton supporters pretending to be Sanders supporters.
Hey, I like that.
We'll see if she comes out attacking him now about what his supporters' behavior.
Oh, I don't think
too is, if 10,000 Trump supporters marched in on a Bernie rally, they would portray it as, this fascist march on free ideas anyway, too. That's the way it would come across.
Absolutely. And that's my point. I'm trying not to take a political side on this, but just looking at the disparity in the coverage, they're making it all out as if, Donald Trump is the reason for violence. And I just think that's ridiculous. He might be in certain instances here and there, but to blame this man and his political positions, which no matter if you think they're ridiculous or not, when he says, I'm going to deport people, really all he's saying is enforce laws on the books. So put your anger towards the laws that he's saying to enforce. But if you can't even say enforce the law, and I don't agree with his deportation policy, don't get me wrong, but if even just saying to enforce the laws on the books gets you a violent group breaking up your rally, that's just a scary point in how politics goes forward in this country.
Not to skip ahead too much because we'll get into the Republican debate, but he said a terrifying thing during the Republican debate, which is going outside. He wanted to, quote unquote, expand a certain group of laws, which we'll talk about later, but that kind of thing is terrifying. So
the libel laws.
Stay tuned, guys. Don't turn off the podcast.
Oh, I just gave a spoiler alert. Are we talking about the libel laws thing?
No.
Something else.
Much
okay,
worse.
then it's not spoiled yet. We'll get there.
Yeah.
All right, so let's just move on from this. But I just think just seeing all the imagery and the way it's being portrayed is it's very troubling. That's all I will say about that for now. But Odie, you referenced the Libertarian debate. Why don't you just describe this? I know you checked it out. You are a Libertarian debate correspondent. So first of all, just tell us what this debate is all about. What was the setup, the format?
Yeah, it was a strange debate. I watched it, and I'll just give you just an overview of what it was like for our listeners. And I'm sure many of our listeners who are libertarians watched it. But I think it was actually conducted on Google Hangouts. I originally thought on Skype, but I think it was on Google Hangout. And they had, I think, 7 candidates total. All the main ones were there: Gary Johnson, McAfee, Austin Peterson, as well as Steve Kerbell was also in there so that was good to see because he missed the first one, I think.
Right.
But it was all conducted on Google Hangouts, and it was terrible quality. It was very awkward. Whenever the moderator would ask a question, there were multiple times.
This podcast is better produced and less awkward than that Libertarian debate. Yes,
much
or no?
better produced.
And we're all half in the bag.
You can't even compare the two. It was so bad. The moderator would ask a question, and then there'd be silence. And it kept happening with the one guy, Jack Robinson. Every time he was asked a question, Jack, are you there? Jack, unmute. Can you unmute? Jack, can you unmute, please? And then hold on mute finally. Can you hear me? Okay, let's go. All right. And it'll go into it. But
Painful.
it was bad. And just a quick summary. So speaking of Jack Robinson, I'd never heard of him before. He had a pretty strange viewpoint. He had this policy or platform he talked about called triple up economics, and he never really explained what it was. But so his first rant, I'll call it, he introduced this trickle up economics, and he said that only himself and Gary Johnson were the only 2 credible candidates, and he went through to one by one personally attack each other candidate, especially Austin Peterson. This guy freaking hates Austin Peterson. It was funny how much he hates him. Accusing Austin Peterson of trying to silence his son or something, or editing out his son from a video. And anyway,
okay. What was the video?
Editing his son out of a video? That's an interesting
I guess there was some debate, and this guy accused Austin Peterson of editing his son out, and Austin Peterson said there were problems with with the mic, I think. I can't remember specifically, so don't take my word for it 100%. And the guy said, "Oh, it can't be right. You edited him out multiple times. Was the mic bad multiple times?" But it was just a weird, strange exchange. Very, very weird. And McAfee, so everyone else had had the video of himself there. McAfee had just had an avatar of himself shirtless with a gun to his head.
Maybe that was actually him in real life, but he just stayed that way the entire time during the debate.
He just took some acid and froze in that position.
He's like, if this debate goes wrong, I'm pulling the trigger. Live.
Is it true that he asked Austin Peterson to take acid with him during the debate?
That is what I read a report and saw something about that. Yes.
Yeah, I actually, if he did, I missed that part. I was skipping around a little bit. I'll be honest. It was hard, and it's just sad. It was hard to watch straight through for how bad the quality was. So I was jumping around some. So I did miss that, if it did happen indeed. I'm not going to lie. But, I mean, there wasn't really much noteworthy to happen that I could talk about. All the ideas are fairly generic, libertarian, dogmatic talking points. McAfee, of course, was focusing on cybersecurity for any chance he could. One interesting thing McAfee did say, talking about the TSA, he had an idea just instead of having all the TSA agents deployed across the country, instead of just unemploying them all, just take them out of the airports, continue to pay them, but that would eliminate the overhead. He says that would 15-20% of TSA's overhead, and that would save billions of dollars.
He said that on my interview as well.
Did he? Okay.
Yeah.
It's not a bad idea. It's better than spending the money on overhead. So I don't have a problem with it. And Austin Peterson has his penny plan, which he wants to cut 1 penny out of every federal dollar. He was very big on that.
Rand Paul brings that one up as well all the time. The penny plan for cutting spending. Basically it's a 1% cut across the board everywhere is the idea.
Is that each year? Another?
I think it's for
1%?
like 5 years or something like that.
I don't know if he gave a time frame, but I guess
at least that's the one that Rand talks about. It's supposed to.
Does Rand say what happens after 5 years then? Or
I think the whole thing just blows up.
ISIS wins. That's what happens after 5 years. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, that's when ISIS wins. But that's why it's a 5-year plan, not a 4-year plan. You see.
What did my man Feldman have to say? Anything good?
I don't think Feldman was in the debate. Now that I think of it,
that's inexcusable.
He might have been, but he didn't say anything noteworthy. If he was, that I can. He's not. He didn't make my notes. Let's put it at that.
Your one note. This is an embarrassment. Period.
Yeah, it was bad. It's sad. I mean, we do this podcast. We don't have video, so we're not going down that road. But I feel like if we decided to do video, we might have 1 bad run or 2 bad runs. We could probably pull it together and have a semi-professional show. But the Libertarian Party, this third party that wants to get 5%, that is focused on it, wants to be the next big party, can't even pull together for their presidential election. I think that's pretty sad.
Yeah, well, it's the local parties doing it, but it's like it's not that difficult to do. And if you can't do it right, don't do it. Because all it is a pure and simple embarrassment. Like you said, you see this kind of stuff. How is anybody supposed to take it seriously? It's a joke. And I know libertarians want to be independent.
I'm not going to send it to anyone. I'm not going to send this debate and say, "Here, check out these guys. Check out their ideas." It's embarrassing.
Yeah, you can't even pull ideas out because it's such a joke. And I understand libertarians especially want to be independent. I'm sure the local parties want to be independent of the overarching libertarian national committee. But at some point, you got to say, look, you got to do this right. You have to do it a certain way. We need people to buy in. Otherwise, it's going to be a joke, and people are just going to laugh at us as they're doing now. Like, even if libertarians cannot watch this, how is anybody else suspected to?
Maybe I should host a libertarian debate on this show.
I think you should. Well, I told you, I want to pitch them and do let me do your PR. Let me do your branding, because this is pathetic right now.
Why don't you do our branding first?
The
one step at a time, guys.
I want to do it for something that matters.
All right. Cool. Well, nice to have you on the show. This will be your last appearance.
That's good. I'm trying to get out of it. I'm burned out on debates. Just kidding. I kid. I love doing it.
All right. Well, speaking of debate burnout, actually, before we move on, Rico isn't here this week. So since we're talking about the libertarians, I think it's time for a Feldman fact.
Yeah!
I'm going to need to get some kind of audio cue with that at some point. But for now, I've only got one because, I'm not the expert on this topic. But I did find that Back in 2014, Mark Allen Feldman ran for election to the office of Ohio Treasurer in Ohio, obviously. But he was disqualified before the primary, so we never got to find out.
But for what?
That I can't tell you. My fact sheet does not go into further detail on that. I'm sorry. But I'm assuming next time Rico is on the show, he'll have more details on Mark Allen Feldman's disqualification, or if he would respond to my request to come on the show, maybe he could tell the world.
I think more people was Rico's fact on the last podcast. It was he didn't get enough signatures seen on the ballot.
Oh, is that what it was? The lack of signatures.
And this is recycled fact.
So we had one. You had one job of recycling a Feldman fact.
That was not my job. I just took it on once I realized we had no Rico here. All right. Well,
I'm gonna look one up during a recap. I'll have one by the end of the show.
Feldman fact. All right. You got 20 minutes. All right. So speaking.
One more note before we move on.
All right.
I just saw my note and would.
Actually, yeah. Why don't you tell me if you were someone who listened to this debate and didn't know much about these candidates, who would come across the best? That's what I want to know.
I'll get to that, but before I do, this is what Jack Robinson said about some of the other candidates. He called McAfee a drug kingpin. He called Perry a hobo anarchist. And he called Austin Peterson a cowardly liar, immature, and a failure at all he has ever attempted.
Well, so he sure is making friends out there.
Nicely done.
Well, I would say Jack Robinson came across the best. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, Gary Johnson. I think Gary Johnson came across as the least risky candidate. And I say that as someone who I've been disappointed in Gary Johnson up until this point. I know I saw a web advertisement or something like that he had out there. It just looked like he was mailing it in, much like the Rand Paul campaign. Just seemed like he had no emotion or anything behind it. And I kind of like to see some fresh blood. But looking at the candidates we have, I mean, I'll support McAfee if he got it. I'll probably vote for him. I'll probably support Austin Peterson too. But I think Gary Johnson is probably at this point the best bet to carry at least some sort of libertarian ideas, libertarian principles, if you want to call them that, forward.
He feels like the front runner, kind of, doesn't he? I mean, he just feels like who's going to end up the nominee.
Yeah, I think so. I think he's definitely a front runner. Yeah.
Are you ready for a Feldman fact?
You're damn right I am.
Already got one.
Hopefully better than mine.
Feldman fact time.
That's not the one we're going with, but thanks.
All right, well, it's a trial run. All right, so here you go. Feldman, who grew up in Maryland just outside of Washington, D.C., disliked politics from an early age, and he found there were no politicians worth voting for. Only until he discovered libertarianism and started voting at age 50.
That was Rico's fact, too. That's a recycled fact again.
Rico also gave that fact, yes.
How did he know that?
Someone doesn't even listen to this show.
That's the only fact about him.
Maybe those are the only two facts about Mark Allen Feldman that exist.
That might be it. Damn him.
All right, text Rico. You got 20 minutes to get us a fresh Feldman fact. In the meantime... speaking of debate burnout, I think we agree that, I mean, I'm ready for some libertarian debates, like an actually well-produced one, like this Fox Business debate, which, of course, they're shooting while I'm out of town for a week. Wonderful. But,
where are you going to be? What are you doing instead?
We don't care.
Yeah, who cares? I'm going to be in
Houston. We
Houston.
got things to talk about here, Howie.
I'm going to be out of town, okay? That's all that matters.
All right.
We're going to try to do some kind of show about that one soon, though, or shortly after it airs. We'll see. We'll get you the details at the time, but... I think we're all pretty worn out on the Democrat and Republican debates. There were two this week. That's the bad news. The good news is that there are currently no more scheduled. Now, I've heard Trump say, these debates are pointless now, but yeah, they're talking about having some more, so we'll probably do some. And then, so I think there will be more debates, especially if these primaries are still seem like they're going to be at least contentious for a while. I mean, even if Trump keeps winning, I guess there were a couple primaries this weekend. Howie, our primary reporter, what primaries took place on Saturday?
On Saturday, the show airing on Monday. Two primaries. A lot of people might not know about it because there weren't for very many delegates, and it was just for the Republican Party. There was Washington, D.C., the establishment headquarters. Marco Rubio won that with 37% of the vote, and John Kasich came in second with 35%. So that's, our nation's capital is definitely the home of the establishment. So,
Is that Rubio's first primary win?
I think it's his second.
What else did he win?
I don't remember, but there was one. There was one, but I know he's hoping to win Florida coming up on Tuesday, and it's not going to happen.
Not happening.
According to the polls, and I saw even if all of John Kasich supporters vote for Rubio too, if the polls are correct, Trump is still going to beat him in his home state. So, but the other primary this Saturday was Wyoming, which has 26 delegates, and Cruz won that. Kasich actually got 0 votes in Wyoming. But it was Ted Cruz 66%, Rubio 19%, and Trump 7%.
He couldn't
Is that one of those things where it's a caucus and maybe they voted twice and he just dropped off, or did he really get no votes?
I don't know the details. I'm just looking at Google, and the number of delegates they're signing doesn't add up to the total, but I guess they're saying Cruz gets at least 9 and Rubio and Trump each get at least 1, but there's still some unaccounted for delegates. I don't know how those get split up.
You know who those are going to? Rand Paul, because he's doing the undercover run for the convention.
Oh, yeah.
Clearly,
It's still randing. Still randing is trending. It's not trending, actually, anywhere. But
hey, one last election-related thing I wanted to mention. When I was looking at the polls earlier, Illinois, I think that's on Tuesday as well, the Democrats, Hillary had like a 30% lead in the polls not too long ago. And this newest one that came out, Sanders is up by 2%. It's 48 to 46.
maybe the whole all the people shutting down the Trump rally energized the Sanders base.
I was thinking maybe it was the Michigan win he pulled out, but it seems like the more people get to hear him and think about how much they hate Hillary, he just gets more and more popular. I'm still calling Bernie's going to be the Democratic candidate. We'll see.
There isn't anything more interesting that I can think of the possible results than Bernie versus Trump. You know, policies aside, just in terms of interesting. I mean, that would be amazing.
I can't wait.
I'm still not convinced that Bernie has a shot, but I mean, I would love it. I mean, I disagree with him profusely, but I mean, I think Hillary's terrible, and I hate for that to be the choice. I could view a world where I hold my nose and kind of sort of wish for Bernie in a way, or that I wish for Trump in a way over a Hillary, over a Trump. But it's hard for me to even think about a nose-holding situation for Hillary because she's just so obviously terrible. I'll take the silence.
She lies about everything. Everything she says is a lie. Didn't Donald Trump say that?
He did say that, and he's going to be saying that a lot if they're in a general election together, believe you me.
Did you guys hear about her blunder recently that she had to take back? She was praising Nancy Reagan for everything she did about AIDS.
Yeah.
But I guess during that period of time, everyone was begging President Reagan or her to do anything or say anything about HIV and the crisis at the time, but they wouldn't talk about it at all. So Hillary had to come out and eat her words and be like, "Oh, yep."
Well, did you see also the meme today was going on the internet, which is pretty funny. I shouldn't call it a meme; it was just accurate. So Hillary also was saying, Bernie, where were you when I was trying to get healthcare back in 93, 94? There's a picture of her giving a speech about healthcare, and he's literally standing right behind her in the picture.
That was pretty good.
That's awesome.
He's like, I was right behind you.
That was a pretty good burn, if you will.
Hilarious.
Ooh.
Yeah. That's the kind of comedy you can expect from the Lions of Liberty, folks.
Well, is that a good segue into the Democratic debate?
Yes, it could be. Would you like to be our Democratic debate correspondent?
Sure, I have some notes on it.
Right.
Not a ton, because I don't want to go too long, but I do.
And
I have
by the
some notes
way,
to talk about.
Before we get into that, I'd like to remind or inform our audience, whenever there is a Democrat or Republican debate, hopefully for any of the Libertarian debates that we can get live, we'll do this too. But for some time, we've been doing a live blog over at lionsofliberty.com. This past week, we decided to do some things a little differently and do a live sort of chat/blog in our private Facebook group, the Lions of Liberty Forum. That is the name of it, the Lions of Liberty Forum. And you can come and join just by going over and typing that in your Facebook search bar. We'll, of course, link to that in the show notes for the show today as well, lionsofliberty.com/192. So come join the conversation. Whenever there's a debate, whenever there's anything you want to discuss with us, come join the Lions of Liberty Forum and join the conversation because we're all in there. We're all having a good old chat and a good old time, and you can be a part of the conversation too. So, all right.
Okie dokie.
Now that my PSA is over,
all right.
What stood out to you from the Democrat debate?
Yeah, so I'll start at the top here. So, they introduced people and they did their opening statements. And Hillary, to me, I think Bernie's getting to her. She looked scared. There was a wild, terrified look in her eye, like a caged animal. Because she come out, she goes, I got more votes and delegates in the beginning. And she's never said that before. Talking about this last Super Tuesday. I got more votes and delegates for no reason. So I'm thinking, you're protesting a little too much, Hill. You look a little panicked. So I think she's feeling it. Now, during this debate, there were a couple of main points, one of which this is at the very beginning as well, was that Bernie voted for indefinite detention of illegal immigrants. And Hillary Clinton nailed him on that, and Bernie did not have a response. He talked about illegal immigration in general, but he had no direct response for this because he definitely had voted for it. And Hillary brought it up again later in the debate, and again, no response whatsoever. And I thought that was pretty interesting.
Like he just refused to respond to it. He just moved on, or
He just did.
Yeah, he did not counter it in any way whatsoever. He just accepted it because he voted for it. So what's he gonna say?
Yeah, exactly. And this a big theme of this debate, of course, was immigration, because it was a co-hosted with like Univision, and which was a little bit of a mess because they had people translating the Spanish, and they did it so that the Spanish volume was louder than the translation volume, so you couldn't understand anything that was being said. Fortunately, they just went into English towards the about after 10 minutes. But yeah, it was a lot of immigration stuff. At one point, it was kind of crazy. They brought out this little old Guatemalan lady, not that old, maybe like 40, who was separated from her children. And they bring her out, and they go, "Hey, don't you think that this woman should be reunited with her kids?" And she's there like crying in front of the candidates. It's like, what the hell do you think they're going to say?
My favorite part was the second question they asked Hillary Clinton was, who gave you permission to put an email server in your home? And if you get indicted, are you going to drop out of the race?
Oh, yeah.
She just talked around it. And they're like, no, you missed the question. The question was, who gave you permission for the email server? Was it President Obama? And she's like, no, all my predecessors did it. I didn't need permission from him. I didn't ask permission. And they're like, and if you get indicted, will you drop out? And she just starts laughing. She's like, that's not going to happen. So I'm not even going to answer that question.
They were going after her hard during this debate. I mean, they really pulled no punches.
What was that guy's name? Jorge?
Jorge was the king of the night.
He had treated Trump like that. Trump would have been like, he doesn't speak English, throw him over the wall, take his coat.
Take his coat from him.
But,
no, seriously, that guy, I wish I made a specific note. He had one line where it was just like unbelievable. He just would not let her go off the topic, and I loved every second of it.
His daughter works for Hillary, too, or something.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Fired immediately.
Or dead, I don't know.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard this defense for Hillary Clinton for the emails before. She said that they were retroactively classified, and it was a case of overclassification, like they were disclassifying them just to get her, which I had never heard that before.
I doubt the Obama administration's going out of their way to attack Hillary Clinton.
It's a pretty ridiculous defense.
Yeah.
I think if people don't need to take my word, check PolitiFact. What she's saying is false. Yeah. And I do have a Feldman fact for you guys if you're ready.
Oh, Howie!
All right, let's do it.
He is actually the uncle and godfather of Corey Feldman.
No,
Shut up. Not. Get out of here.
Shut up.
I don't know. I thought a fake Feldman fact might be
best thing ever.
You could have sold me on that if you kept up the lie a little bit longer.
Maybe we could have a fake Feldman fact every
I want it if he runs on VP to be Corey Haim's father.
Maybe we'll play a game next time.
Which is the fake and which is the real Feldman?
Yeah, exactly. Well, next time we'll come loaded with a Feldman facts game. I think.
Sounds awesome.
Maybe we'll just do a whole show, just Feldman facts, a weekly show.
It'll be 10-minute long. Okay, so wait.
Until he comes on the show, we will continue this segment. That's the threat.
Howie, you said it was she was unconvincing in a lot of her answers on the emails, but they also brought up Benghazi, which I don't remember that really coming up too much in previous debates. But again, they were nailing her on it and asking, like, what about these, what about what happened in Benghazi, about the 4 deaths? And Hillary's defense was the most utterly ridiculous, unconvincing garbage. She basically didn't apologize for for these 4 people that died that she could have easily prevented if she had paid attention or believed their emails coming in. And she basically justified it by saying, well, there's been a lot of other terrorist attacks and they've killed a lot more people. 9/11, 3,000 people died. And, an embassy was attacked during Bill Clinton, my husband's time in the office, and a lot more people died there. And, so my thing's not that big a deal. And it's like, are you fucking kidding me? That's your defense? That only 4 people died on your watch?
What's troubling to me is that they didn't even attempt to send any help. Not that, maybe they wouldn't be able to get there in time.
No, they just ignored it.
They wanted it to be this small thing because an election was coming up, and they were hoping it wouldn't blow up into this big mess that it became.
Right.
And,
so if we just don't send any forces in to help, maybe just some guy will die and it won't be a big deal and we don't need to talk about it.
Yeah, and then we could play it off and say that it was caused by a terrorist video, which is, of course, proven.
The exact opposite happened, and yet she still might be the president.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Tragic.
Crazy world we live in, folks.
Some other points.
To make a point of my own, to me it seems like, especially, with the whole Univision thing, you can kind of see like where the anti-immigration backlash comes from when you have a debate hosted in Spanish, when you have two candidates basically fighting over who wants to let more people into the country. Meanwhile, you've got people that, right or wrong, perceive immigrants as part of the problem of why they have lost their jobs, whether it's people overseas that are taking their jobs because corporations are sending their jobs out there, or whether it's people coming here working for cheaper. I'm not saying that is a good assessment, but it is the perception, and you can see how, when it's presented this way in a Democratic debate, you can see why Trump is doing well, why he comes in with the opposite position, because he doesn't do what most other Republicans do, which is kind of toe the line on this stuff. He takes the hardest line position he can possibly take, and because that's what gets him the attention, and that's what emboldens that base that is getting pissed off about that stuff. They're not going to be hyped up by, Marco Rubio's wishy-washy immigration stance. They're going to be hyped up by Donald Trump saying, we got to stop this. We're going to build a wall. We're going to deport everybody. That's what's getting them excited. Not even the words or the policies, but the energy behind it and the non-wishy-washy nature of it, I guess I would say. That's
well, it's like the article I wrote. Do Americans want a bully in chief? And they do. They want somebody that's going to come in and just be like, I'm going to get it done. You're going to just believe me. I got you handled. I'm going to take control. You're going to believe in me. I got everything. Trust the daddy will make everything right. And that's all it is. That's what they're attracted to. I
think people are just so sick of the political establishment. They just want somebody to come in and flip the checkerboard over and just say the hell with it, blow things up.
Well,
I don't think they want people to just flip it over and then just walk away. Like Austin Peterson's thing is, I'm going to take over the government and leave you alone. Which, without getting into the rhetoric there, I think Brian's right that they do want a bully in chief. People don't want to be left alone. I think that's part of the problem. And that's part of the problem with libertarians. Libertarians trying to spread their message because it's not what people want. And libertarians can blame the state for everything that ails them, but it's really the people supporting these laws in the first place.
Yeah, it comes out of like people want to know that there's someone out there taking care of them and that it's going to protect them against perceived evils, whether they're real or not. Now, sometimes there's some people that are totally against government, like Perry, just destroy the government. I think most of you believe as well, that there is a role for government, but it's just a limited role. It has to be confined within very strict parameters, but there is a place for government to protect things, to enforce contracts. So most Americans, I think on both sides, still believe that you need government there to make sure things aren't going to go completely haywire. And I agree with that. So yeah, you need to feel taken care of on some level. But as we've seen, more and more people are getting on the government dole, where that taking care of has gone from something which was more for a tax or more for justice and gone into more literal, we're taking care of you. Half the country is on disability. We are literally taking care of you because nurses that are being paid for from disability are coming to your house. We are feeding you. You're living off food stamps from the government. You're living off of wages from the government. So that's a huge problem.
Yeah, I mean, everybody, you either want Bernie to protect you from the corporations and take care of you, or you want Trump to protect you from immigrants and from evil socialists.
Right. It's a lot of fear based. It's just, what are you afraid of? That's what we're going to play to.
I'm afraid of Mark Allen Feldman.
I love him.
Now that I know he's related to Corey, I don't know what to think. Yeah. Or is he? All right. So anything else on the Democratic debate before we briefly touch
couple
on
quick
this?
Points. Bernie has said he has always been against special interests, unironically, despite the fact that he is a big proponent of unions and unions that love him. So what are unions if not for special interests? Those are special interests.
Those don't count in his world.
Ridiculous. Yeah. Don't count for the Democrats. They also talked about, like, Hillary Clinton talking about how successful Bill Clinton was and how the country was doing so well under his watch. And that drives me insane when politicians do that, because you were undergoing a massive tech bubble at the time. Plus, the global economy is doing well. So it's like, to think that your actions as president could somehow increase the productivity and the GDP of America by 20% is insane and ridiculous to say.
I can't stand any of the during this year, this guy was president and this thing happened that was good. It's like the president himself has so little effect on these things. Just stop it, people. Stop it.
Case in point, John Kasich balanced the budget when Bill Clinton was president.
There you go.
Case in point.
But it's true. It's like, come on, there's so many factors at play here. Like Bush gave back $300 stimulus to everybody. And it was like, oh, wow, $300. Did it make the economy go boom? No, it's $300. It doesn't change anything. So it's like, to take credit is just an exercise in ego and politicking and nothing else, and people buy into it. Like, I hate it when people see, post gas prices. Like, oh, Obama lowered our gas prices. It's like, Obama didn't do anything to affect that.
Fracking and technology lowered gas prices.
Yeah, and also just the product overproduction of oil, and also China not buying gasoline like they were because their industry's slowing down. It's like saying, oh, Obama lowered prices on steel. No, steel prices went down because China's not buying up all the steel like they were.
To build their ghost cities.
Idiotic. We need to, we should move to a ghost city in China. Low rent.
Just take over.
We could podcast. We could have our own podcast, Lions of Liberty podcast
Can you get
building.
Internet there?
Yeah. I was using
ghost
internet when I was there.
In a ghost city?
No, well, I wasn't in the ghost city. I was in a literal ghost city. It had.
I'm sure John McAfee
could
find a way to get us internet over there. So.
Yeah, exactly. Get McAfee in there.
One thing I wanted to point out from the Dem debate, there was a back and forth, and Hillary was defending. I don't know if you remember this exchange, Brian. Maybe you can add more to it after. She was defending the Export-Import Bank.
Yes.
And then Bernie came back right away and said, the Export-Import Bank is the bank of Boeing. Yep. And Hillary had no response at all.
How could she? They get so many millions of dollars in support for this massive industry. And if you remember the previous debate, she was saying, oh, the government needs to be going out and shilling for Boeing. It's like, really? That's it? We're selecting a salesman now as president? So, yeah, the Export-Import Bank was awesome to see Bernie take her down on that. That's one thing I love Bernie on. He also was good on regime change again in this debate. And unlike a lot of people who just focus on the Middle East, he did bring up the fact that America has been very much involved in Latin America as well with regime change. Not only like with, look at Colombia, look at all these like overthrowing these, cartels and also the dictators in place. But we've had a lot of interaction there. Yeah. So it's surprising that Latin America doesn't hate us as much as the Middle East does.
In Chile, September 11th means something else. It's the day that the United States help violently overthrow an elected leader, and that's their 9/11. I mean, the United States has been involved in these countries for many, many decades.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons that globally many people do see the United States, as Darryl Perry, that anarchist libertarian candidate, says, as the greatest terrorist organization in the world. Because a lot of people around the world have experienced terror at the hands of the United States government with the CIA supporting terrible regimes. So there's a reason that these things happen. There's a reason that hatred gets built up against America, and Donald Trump's not the only reason.
Well, and people convince themselves that, oh, no, well, if America did it, it's right. And it's like, based on what? Because we're on your Judeo-Christian values and because we believe democracy is the way to go. It's like, look, I'm not condoning radical Islam, but they believe their way is right. So, I mean, it's just a matter of point of view. So you could argue, we've done a hell of a lot of terrorist shit for reasons that other cultures would say are crazy. That's it. One more thing. Also, Bernie Sanders was against regime change, blah, 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 but then he also supported Castro because they had health care there, which I thought was pretty funny.
He's against evil dictators unless they provide health care.
Right, exactly. Never mind that the economy went to garbage and everything else. Yeah, which and also they talk about, when we go to the Republican debate in a second, they also talked about Cuba there, which was entertaining.
Oh, well, that's
Bernie
a good
also
segue.
wants,
or not.
Bernie also wants to decimate the energy sector. Before we segue,
that's right. You go ahead.
We've talked about this on our email chain there a little bit, but all he wants to have is wind, solar, and geothermal. He wants to get rid of coal, which is pretty much being phased out anyway. But the bigger thing is he doesn't want any nuclear, and he wants to ban fracking. So I mean, you can say what you want about the individual industries and subsidies and whatnot. He's not even attacking that aspect of it. He just wants completely green across the board, not thinking about any of the energy impacts. And, you guys will come back and probably say, well, that won't happen. And it probably won't, but I still think that's a dangerous policy. And some of that has really happened. If you look at in Germany, they've started to phase out that type of energy. In Japan, after Fukushima, they've actually had problems because I think they shut down their entire nuclear fleet, and they've had, rolling brownouts and blackouts. In a time where your energy demands right now, I think, are higher than they've ever been, where the infrastructure, as John McAfee could tell you, cybersecurity-wise, you could have the grid wiped out probably, and he's wanting to take off our major energy producers. I think it's a dangerous idea, and I think we have to take it seriously, even if you think it might not happen. I think there is a lot of support for it on the Democratic side.
Well, and also just think about how many millions and billions of dollars he's going to spend subsidizing those industries. Like Bernie loves to decry, crony capitalism for oil and all these fossil fuel supports, but then he wants to turn around and subsidize green energy. So how is that not crony capitalism?
Tis.
Yeah.
Tis.
But of course, unironically, they don't realize that the things that they hate are the exact same things that they support with a different name.
Yeah, and if they wanted more solar power, the easiest way to do it, and some of these are local government laws, so there's problems there, or state laws. You're punishing people for having solar panels, and if they want to sell energy to a neighbor or something, you're not allowed to do it. So it's kind of inherent in a flawed system.
Well, yeah, they force you to pay back to be connected back into the grid, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah, which is absurd.
All right, so let us finally segue. Well, not even segue. We're just going to go right over to the Republican debate. Odie, you are the brave one who really sat through this thing. I know we all had very busy weeks on our end, so you were our Republican debate correspondent. Let's just maybe get a talking point or two, and I'll just say my talking point from the highlights and things I've heard. To me, this seemed to really go a different direction than the previous debate, which was all about attacking Trump, taking down Trump. The tone seemed to be a little different. It almost seemed like, from the highlights and things I've read about it, it didn't seem like that kind of attacking tone was there anymore. Like suddenly the candidates just said, all right, now we're just trying to look good and gain our own delegates, but going after Trump might not be helping us anymore. Did you get that impression at all?
Yeah, I think Rubio and Cruz especially realized that they were gaining nothing by attacking Trump, so they stopped. I thought it was a pretty well-mannered, civilized debate for the beginning half, at least. And the candidates afterward even said so. Probably this debate had the most actual policy content that was talked about. I'm not going to say that they were going deep into policies. It was still, check out my campaign website for this policy. I think Ted Cruz probably said that 5 or 10 times. But one point that I want to talk about, just to kick something off, and we can discuss this. Trump has talked about, putting tariffs, punishing China for taking advantage of it, putting on a tariff tax. And Ted Cruz, rightly, I think, came back and pointed out that a tariff is really a tax on the American people. You put a tax on exporting or importing, that's going to raise the price of American goods. And Trump came right back at him and said that, well, we'll start producing those goods here. We'll start up manufacturing again. And Cruz can't come back at him and say, well, who's going to work in that manufacturing base if you deport all the Mexicans? Because I think Cruz is trying to be in favor of that, at least for election purposes. But I think that is a problem. If that did, the right or wrong of tariffs aside, I think that's I don't think the manufacturing base is there. We don't have people that want to work that type of job.
Trump did say, though, that he wasn't going to have a 45% tariff. He said it was just a threat. Cruz said, the economics of this doesn't work out. He's like, it was just a threat.
Yeah, but then why say it? It's meaningless then.
He's already revealing his strategy. He's basically telling everybody, look, I say these big, bold things to put my first offer out there, but that's not what it's really going to end up at. He's laying it all out there. He's like, no, I was just... He's basically saying what he's saying with everything. The wall, it's a threat. Deport them all. These are all threats. They're not his actual positions that he thinks he's going to get at the end of the day. But
Cruz is building a wall now, too.
Is he? Did he jump on the wall?
In this past debate, he starts talking about his immigration plan. He's like, number one, we're building a wall. Number two, I'm like, what?
Man, all he does is take talking points from other politicians as the ebbs and flows. He takes Rand Paul's talking points when it's convenient. He takes Donald Trump's when it's convenient. God, this is why I just can't stand Cruz the most. He just bugs me.
Yeah.
And he's got a punchable face.
Out, though, I might get the wall I want.
I will say I did want to punch Ted Cruz in the face a little bit less this debate. For some reason, I don't know if he was contorting his face in a different way to seem more likable based on his political advice from his campaign staff, but I didn't hate him.
Mr. Cruz, we heard this Lions of Liberty podcast. They're saying that you have a very punchable face. Is there anything you could do about that?
Change your face, Ted. Change your face.
Well, he had the line of the night, I think, against Trump, though. Trump, they're talking about Trump's rallies when people are pledging, and he said something along the lines of, we don't want a candidate that's asking people to pledge to him. We want a candidate who's pledged to the people. It's a good line.
It is a good line. But it's pretty empty. What does that mean?
Well, exactly. It is very empty. But still. Now, what about Trump saying this debate, before we give him credit for having a reasonable foreign policy where he didn't want to get involved in things. But then in this debate, he said he would have no choice but to use U.S. troops against ISIL, 20,000 or 30,000, depending on what they say.
Not only Trump, every single candidate in a different way said that they would unequivocally that they would have troops on the ground to defeat ISIS. Even John Kasich said that. Now, Kasich followed up by saying he would bring them home after ISIS was defeated. But I just don't see how an American foreign policy, how you would go in there, defeat ISIS. How can it's not believable that you're going to bring all the troops home. They're going to stay there. That's what's happened in Iraq and Afghanistan. They're not going to come back. So pretty much what they said, what the four GOP candidates said was there's going to be another war and we're going to be in the Middle East for the duration of another election cycle.
Which is used to it.
Well, Trump had one way to defeat ISIS, and this is what I was alluding to earlier in the podcast. This is what he said. He said before he wants to kill terrorist families, which, of course, is completely illegal and immoral. And when they pushed on and said, you can't do this, he says, no, we need to expand the Geneva Convention to kill the families of the terrorists. You
know what he should have said? Barack Obama's done it. Why can't I?
That's exactly
that would have been a good line, yeah.
That would have been a good line.
But that's what I was saying. That's so scary that he is willing to say, oh, no, forget the Geneva Convention. Forget all the laws against war crimes. We're just going to go in. This is the United States of war crimes now, led by Donald Trump. We're going to kill your families, kill your cat, kill your dog, everything that you hold dear, just like Saddam Hussein, basically.
Yeah, and who were his sons? Uday and Qusay. That was like their job. They were the enforcers that would just go around like feeding people's uncles to like wild dogs to scare the populace into submission. That's basically what Trump is saying we're going to do.
That's our leader.
That's scary.
That's our guy. Oh boy.
And then one more note. I don't know if you picked this up, Odie. Just looking through I was looking through the transcript, but Rubio still is up his own ass about Cuba, despite the fact that he hails from Cuba. It's like his heritage, but he's still saying, they're not a democracy, and we shouldn't have open trade. We shouldn't have made these agreements with them until they're a democracy. And it's like, who gives a shit if they're a democracy right now? Well, it's not our business, number one. And number two, our biggest trade partner is not a democracy in China. Really? It's like, really? I mean, come on, man. Who are you joking with? This tiny little country you're going to be up your ass about?
I can't even listen to these candidates on Cuba. It is so illogical. It's just ridiculous. I mean, the country is literally how far is Cuba from Florida? It's right freaking there.
It's about 9
It's a communist
miles.
nation, and we're punishing the people of Cuba because of their terrible leaders. It's awful. Yeah. I mean, if you want to promote freedom and free trade, freaking trade with Cuba. It's insane.
Send more Americans there on vacation because then they will see, hey, these guys are living okay. Where are they getting all this money? We don't have money. I wonder why. Maybe it's because we live under a communist dictator. Could that be it? Hint.
Damn well right.
Oh, man. I feel like this country's going to be Cuba in 10 years at this point.
It's moving that direction.
Without as good of a drinks, without as good cigars and Cuba Libres and all that good stuff.
Yeah, we'll probably have Dominican rolled cigars, not Cuban rolled cigars.
Oh, no. Don't say it. To say it ain't so. All right. So, I don't know. Like I said, there are no scheduled debates next week. I believe there is a Libertarian debate next weekend that we'll try to cover in some way, shape, or form. But why don't I just leave off with, I don't want to do a specific prediction, but I guess the last week, we had Trump and, the violence in Chicago. We had these two debates. Who would you say right now, coming out of the past week and more of events, looks like the person most poised to be president? I mean, from both parties. Just who's the first person that comes to your mind that either will be because of what's been going on, or looks like they should be? You can interpret the question however you want, but just who do you think has come out of the last couple weeks with the most, I guess, political gusto? And I'll start with Odie.
Most political gusto.
It's a very vague question, I know. I did that intentionally because I couldn't think of a real question.
Well, I think on the Democrat side, I think Hillary is fading. I don't think Bernie has that presidential gusto, but I think he's poised to make a run here. I don't know if he's going to win, but I think this is going to go to the wire on the Democrat side. And I think, I'm in Pennsylvania. Normally in Pennsylvania, the vote doesn't matter. It won't matter for me anyway, since I'm not a registered Democrat. But I think it'll go far enough. It'll matter in Pennsylvania and beyond. I don't know if Bernie's going to win, but I think he's poised to make a run. On the Republican side, I don't know what's going to happen. I think at the end of the day, Trump will get the nomination, as I said earlier. Cruz is obviously being hurt by the other guys staying in. And I'll just say one more thing. I think Kasich will win Ohio and stay in, and Rubio will get crushed in Florida and drop out.
All right. I think Rubio's going to get murdered in Florida. I can't wait. All right. So, Howie, thoughts?
I also think Rubio's going to get crushed, not in Florida, but just the election in general. If I had to put money on it, I think Trump's going to be the next president. I don't see Cruz being able to gain enough momentum to take him down. And if they have a broker convention, that's just going to be a total shit show. The party is going to be in a shambles.
It's going to be Chicago. It's going to be Chicago with all Republicans.
It'll be Chicago on steroids. I think they realize that, and they won't go that far.
Well, the best part is, these protesters are going to show up at that Republican convention, too. So if you might have Republicans fighting Republicans, and then, Black Lives Matter showing up to join the party, too. It might get wild in Cleveland.
It'll bring America
together. Aren't we all
together.
showing up at Rico's house for the convention?
I think that's the plan.
Count me in.
And if my prediction doesn't come true and Bernie doesn't become the Democratic candidate, even though I'm sure Trump would mop the floor with him as well, but I don't think Clinton has any chance of beating anybody at this point in time.
All right.
All of the Republicans on stage at debate came off better than Hillary, in my opinion. So I think it's going to be President Trump.
That's two for Trump, I think. Brian, thoughts?
I would say Bernie has just made up a lot of ground on Clinton. I think he will be the nominee for the Democrats. Trump will be the nominee for the Republicans. And I foresee, even though it's terrifying, I actually think Bernie Sanders would emerge victorious.
You think Bernie's going to be president?
I think
That's
he will be.
your current prediction?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I honestly do.
All right.
He's got so much momentum behind him. A lot of the Democrats look like they're already fleeing and jumping ship. And when it comes to him versus Trump, I think he will end up winning out.
Hey, if nothing else, it would be nice to finally scratch this first Jewish president itch, right? I think we've all been waiting for the first Jewish
Top
president.
of my list, man. Top issue.
Giant menorah on the White House lawn. It's going to be awesome.
If nothing else, we would have 4 years of Larry David as Bernie Sanders.
That's like my prime motivation right now. What's going to entertain me the most? And for that reason, it may be Bernie. However, despite all the momentum Bernie is gaining, it does seem like he really is formidable against Clinton. It's still hard for me to think that he'll win the superdelegates. But like you said, if just like Obama, if the momentum shifts far enough in his direction that it would actually hurt those superdelegates politically to not go with the flow and take Bernie, that's when he would have the chance. So, and there is this wild card hanging out, this indictment wild card that could really end Hillary permanently. And if that's the case, yeah, then Bernie's going to be the nominee, obviously. So I don't think Bernie has the wizardry skills of Donald Trump. And I think Donald Trump is going to continue this negativity, because that's what's working for him in the primary. But I think once we get to the general election, you're going to be amazed at what Donald Trump does to turn the perception of him around. I don't have the slightest clue how to do it because I'm not a wizard, but he is a wizard and he has a way of doing things. And I think he's inevitable. I don't see, and it's kind of scary. I mean, I think Trump as president is the wild card, no matter what way you look at it. It's a wild card that could turn out better than things are now, for all we know. He is a smart guy. All reports are that he's a very great person to work with in the business world. So, I mean, is this just a character he's playing on TV? I don't know, but I don't think it matters because I think this is inevitable. But I don't know. This is the strangest election year ever between the Bernie and Hillary stuff, between the infighting in the Republican Party. I mean, are they all going to just coalesce and go around Trump because it's inevitable, or are people going to fight him? I mean, you still hear conservatives talking about going third party and putting up Mitt Romney in an independent bid, all these crazy things. And I just don't know what to do because so many people have condemned Trump. It's like, I mean, Mitt Romney would look silly if he came out in support of Trump now, and so would so many of these other guys, but it's never stopped them in the past, so.
I heard Mitt Romney's going to run as Gary Johnson's VP.
That'd be awesome.
That would be incredible. All right, guys. Well, somehow we made it through another week of political debates and crazy rallies and crazy debate coverage. And it's a scary thing, I think, the way things seem to be going. It does seem like we're more divided than ever, but I don't know. Maybe it seems like that every once in a while. I mean, I'm sure in the 60s and 70s it seemed that way too. So it doesn't necessarily mean the world is coming to an end, but it sure is making for some interesting and perhaps frightening times. I'm just glad to have some good old friends here drinking along with me, or not along with me because I'm not drinking, but thank God you guys are drinking for me because someone's got to do it.
Don't call us heroes, man. We're just people.
All right, and this coming Wednesday, I'm speaking to a great guy named Eric July. He is a rapper, lead singer of the band Backwards. I do highly recommend checking out. They got some pretty cool metal stuff, actually. It's actually metal music, which is pretty sweet. And he's a very opinionated fellow, and we spend a good amount of time talking about Bernie Sanders, a guy who he thinks is the worst option for president right now. So enjoy that interview. And next week, of course, I know we got another Felony Friday coming, Odie. Do you want to give a little preview while we're on?
On Friday, we have Lions of Liberty legal counsel, Mr. Rico, will be on Felony Friday.
It's about time you got another lawyer on the show.
Yeah, so I'm interested to get the legal view from Rico. It'll be entertaining as always.
All right, and then next week we'll be back here with more stuff, more coverage. But the wonderful thing is you got 3 different episodes from us this week, as you do every single week at Lions of Liberty, and they're all kind of different. We usually get you a round table like this one, and I'll do an interview show most weeks, and then we got Felony Friday on Fridays. So things are picking up, always something fun in the Liberty world. We're pleased to have you here. Please do subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, however you listen to the show, and please do give us a 5-star rating and leave us a great review. That's the best way to help us get this show out to more people out there. Until then, guys, are you ready to join me here? Do you think we can get in sync for this? Because I only have one more message for the world, and that is, of course, to live long and live free.
Head of editing and mastering is John Dauber.
Contact Johnny53 at gmail.com.